So if you've heard the podcast before, we're actually going to spend a little bit of time looking at the imagery that Shahzad has done. And Shahzad, you're going to walk us through some of these images we've chosen, and you've been very kind to bring one of your first early images, which is always scary to show people. But this image here you have of Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, I'm guessing, is really, even though it's your first image, it's not terrible. Walk us through the iteration of this.
This was the second image I took on my first day of experimenting with action figures. I was not going for this image.
Okay.
I was just going to have them squaring off against each other. I think my shutter speed must have been really slow.
A tad.
So
Just a tad.
yeah, just a tad.
And then we're going to fast forward 4 years later, and you've learned a little bit, here with Darth and, which character is this?
It's just a random humanoid figure. This was part of the series that we spoke on the podcast where I spoke about having all
these
of these characters come in.
Iterations and people.
Where you have Star Wars characters and the Empire sort of capturing new planets. And this was like a scene I thought up that would be very Darth Vader if he is going to lay claim to a planet.
This is otherworldly, not to, overdo it, but talk to me about the process and the creation of this image, because it's still action figure, so we know it's small scale, but this is different.
So these are 6-inch action figures.
Still, that's dinky. That's small.
It is. And I spent everything you see is in camera. So the fire, the embers, the particle effects, all of it is in camera. So every single thing.
Okay.
And it took about 3.5 hours to get the shot. I spent most of the day out in the sun waiting until I got the sun hitting the figures in the exact way that I wanted them to.
This is not artificial light.
It's a combination of both. It's sunlight and continuous light.
Tungsten?
So the continuous light, no, just small portable LEDs. Yeah. And I lit the figures. I used the sun as my key source, but I didn't want it to be the key source on the front. I wanted it to be backlit with the sun.
That very cinematic reverse key that so much of us just love.
And everything, all the highlights you see along the horns of the creature and along Darth's helmet, and all the rim that you see is all sunlight. But everything else that fills in is all continuous light. So I used a CTO on it, and I had it nicely filling in for sunlight to make it look really warm. And then what I did was I cooled down the whole image.
Okay.
So I went down to maybe 3,000 Kelvin on the camera.
So that's pretty low. That's pretty orangey for us.
3 to 4,000 Kelvin on the camera. So that ends up with a very blue toned image. And then I decided to warm it up in color grading.
Okay.
So
do that balance. Yeah, there is that idea, like, for those of us that shot film, and when you start playing with color, there isn't this, tungsten has this interesting feel.
It gives you a lot more room to maneuver as opposed to warm tones, because just from my experience, I found warm tones get muddy much faster as compared to cooler tones.
Interesting.
So I know that if I want to go really warm, but this only applies for my action figure work. It does not apply on skin.
And for the embers, what were you using for fire and embers? Just fire and embers? Fires and embers. Love it. This is intense. This is a whole new level. Was this personal work, or was this something you were leading to? Really?
Personal work. I printed this out on a 13x19 paper, and
this is concept art at this point. This is Lucasfilm needs. This is a new episode. I'm hoping, because this is great. I mean, there's Photoshop involved, but can you tell me a little bit of the Photoshop just for
Only the
only the
lightsaber.
lightsaber? Okay.
Mhm. Actually, the chest lights are also on Darth's
Well, I
chest.
mean, we'll let that
Those are
pass.
also
We'll let that
Photoshop.
pass. That's
Yeah.
okay.
But otherwise, it's all in camera.
That is
Um,
intense.
Contrast, all of that is straight
You
up
ready to
in
recreate
camera
that for
stuff.
real? I mean, do you show this to clients going, all right, let's go. Come on, let's do it. Uh,
uh, no, there's something beautiful about being able to do these kind of things in
mhm.
scale. And I don't think I would approach a concept like this. Yeah, I might want to create embers like this if I was to photograph
Ah,
firefighters
sure.
or
Okay.
create like a
Mhm.
military scene. I would love to create
Yeah.
embers like this for something
Okay.
like that. But if it's supposed to be, you need too much money to
True.
create this kind of an
Yeah.
actual
That is
um
the reality you
look.
now
Yeah.
understand better, where it's like, no, I
Yeah.
can't set anything
Yeah.
on fire. It doesn't, that is a hard sell. Um, so this next image I loved because it's so cinematic where you've got, everyone's favorite evil doll, Chucky, just, crushing away. Was this a personal project or was this an assignment?
No, I think this was
Oh,
also
wow.
personal. Yeah.
What, when you're thinking about these personal assignments and the level and the work that you're going to, what are
Mhm.
you thinking about when you want to do this?
So it starts off with the
Hmm.
concept, then I bring in the characters. This applies to both
Okay.
action
Hmm.
figures and people. Concept, what kind of characters the models are going to be playing,
Hmm.
and the lighting. That's all. The posing is left for the day.
When you've got this, and the next image really dovetails into this, you've
Mhm.
got an extremely dramatic, what would be a very hard image to capture with human
Mhm.
beings. A lot of emotion, a
Yeah.
lot of feeling, a lot of grit, a lot of
Yeah.
psychosis, a lot of, oh my gosh, I don't think he's going to swing that hammer gently.
Mhm.
Then in our next image that you've got, where you've got the woman in the car, uh, how difficult was it for you to switch in mentality from these very good, excuse me, very brilliant cinematic um, action figure images to this brilliant cinematic people with opinions and heartbeats and
I'll give them like 10 options. Like, these are 10
mhm.
films. Have you seen
Okay,
any of them? And I usually tend to give like options that people would
sure,
have heard of. She knew what La Femme
okay,
Nikita was, and she decided to, like, yeah,
okay,
I've heard of that. I know what that is. So I said, well, this project is exactly like that.
okay,
Think Sarah Connor, think
hmm,
Nikita, think Aeon Flux, all of these very powerful
sure.
female characters. Think of them, and I want you to bring out what you would do for it and how you would approach it and do that. I don't want any of these characters, but I just want the same
That
mentality. I
motivation,
want the same
got it.
motivation, the same
Okay,
drive. Like, it's a kill or be killed thing. The fun part was, at the time, I didn't know she was ex-military.
wow. Okay,
And on the third day of the shoot, we'd shot this over multiple days because we were just doing one shot a
okay.
day, and
And for
we'd be
school
like,
or
okay, fine,
for
this was done. This was like part
okay,
of an assignment, like one of the
okay,
finals, class finals. This was actually for
okay,
John Manos' class, and I told her that we'll just take this easy because she was in the academy as
okay.
well at the time. So we just figured out that
Yeah,
weekends work best. Take it easy, work through the week, come out on
yeah,
the weekend, create
yeah.
some fun stuff, go back to our lives. Um, and yeah, it just worked out really well. We went out to Treasure Island. Unfortunately, it's
Sure.
closed now, I think. And we drove around. People got freaked out because they saw guns without orange
Yeah.
tips on them. So this was actually a $10 gun
Of
off
course.
of
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Air gun. So yeah, it was really fun, and we had like someone get freaked out and drive 2 rounds around us to see what we were doing. So we got all of that attention as well. And for this particular shot, we actually set up the lights at one particular part like a
Oh,
speed trap,
wow. Okay.
and we drove past them to make sure that we got like a little bit of
Hmm.
motion, and we got a little bit of that
Hmm.
sunlight kicking in as well as the strobe
Hmm.
overpowering that, and kind of combining and then just coming together. And all of it was a
Because
ton
I
of
mean, yeah,
fun.
looking at this image, you could cop out and do this in post
Yeah,
easily. It's
easily.
just a motion blur, like you said, a little bit of here, a little bit of there. No big deal.
Yeah, but
Well,
that's not
and
fun.
you said she was ex-military, so and we're talking about acting here, and your theater
Mhm.
background really kicking in all
Yeah.
the way through.
She's an
And she's an
actor as
actor as
well.
well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, there is that level of I'm doing this for real. You're doing this for
Mhm.
real. Of that
Yeah.
emotion can't be faked.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I love having people who are as invested in a project I'm bringing them on board for, as invested as I am in it. The makeup artist we brought on board, she specializes in
Oh,
special
cool.
effect makeup. So all of the scars, the cuts, all of that looks
Yeah,
very
it doesn't look
realistic.
post.
Um,
It looks
yeah,
practical.
it's all
Oh
in
man.
camera. It's all like we had like actual film grade um
Oh
prosthetics
wow.
done. Like she built out a piece of glass
Oh
sticking out of her
man.
face because we
Mm,
wanted that. We wanted to show that this is a
mhm.
film still. It's not a photograph that's just been comped
Right.
together or something like that. It's a still from a larger story that you're
And
witnessing.
it's nice to look at your work and go, wow, there's a nice little Vogue stamp on it. Tell me, how did
Yeah.
that come about?
So this was I think the proof of concept. Technically, it wasn't a proof of concept. This was going to be an image from my
Okay.
thesis project for my
Hmm. Okay.
graduation project. Um, Turned out we got a pandemic, and this project had to be shelved. The idea was royalty, where we imagine what royals in the past dressed like and how those outfits would convert to a modern
Hmm.
sensibility. So if the Renaissance happened in the 21st century, what would that look like and how would that be inspired from a
Hmm.
fashion perspective? And this image got picked for publishing on Vogue Italia, which was super
Yeah.
cool. A- And the other image with the red background was my first magazine cover, which was also from this project. So these two are like a diptych, whereas this is like the 21st century equivalent of the outfit that we saw in the
Oh,
previous
okay.
image. So it kind of creates these parallels. And when the pandemic struck and all of us went into lockdown, I figured I'd head back home
Hmm.
to Mumbai. So I flew back, and I knew that I still wanted to do something with the Renaissance, and I wanted to do something with fashion and reimagining something, excuse me, for the modern age. Um, and we ended up with Indian
Hmm.
Renaissance, which so this essentially became like a proof of concept for
Oh
that
wow.
project. And when I started pitching that project to designers and stylists, I used these images to pitch that project, and it's what got all the amazing designers who came on board
And that's
for
this
that.
next image here, where this without knowing that backstory, like, oh, this is great religious iconography already. I'm drawn into it. But this
Yeah,
was the culmination of that project. Okay.
it was.
Explain that project. So what was the idea behind your thesis? And we'll put up other images from that as well. What was this concept of that you were going for?
So the entire concept was, what if Indian royals were inspired by the European Renaissance, and and how would that have impacted Indian fashion back
Mm.
then, and how would that impact have translated to modern day Indian fashion, and what would it have looked like? So it was like this big what
Hmm.
if question.
Not
Um,
a far out there question either. I mean, there's a lot of, there's all this great culture that's swimming around at that time. It could have gone any
Yeah,
way.
it could have
Yeah.
definitely happened. Um, but because of the political climate at the time and the nature of the country, um, that never
Hmm.
came to pass. And the actual Indian Renaissance did not happen until the late 60s, early 70s, where there was like this renaissance
Mm,
of art and a little bit of culture and stuff like that. But it was very
okay.
localized and it didn't really spread across the country. But yeah, it would have had a huge impact had it happened. So I figured no one's really
Hmm.
explored this. Why don't I do it?
And what was the thinking beyond that when you started putting these images together? Because a lot of these images have also this religious iconography and this religious
Hmm.
these touch points that are very Western. If you're
Yeah.
talking about Western Renaissance, you always have the golden halo. You have
Hmm.
very Madonna figurines, Christ figurines, saintly
Yeah.
figures.
Yeah.
Um, what brought that about? Was that at the core, or was that something you discovered as you went?
No, art history is something I've always been interested in. So this is a combination of Madonna and Padme Amidala. So this is a combination of both of those things, and it sort of comes together, combining religion, combining pop culture. I really enjoy doing that,
Well, I
and
mean, they go hand in hand whether we want to admit it or not.
yeah, yeah, you've got all of these parallels that you can draw up between Greek
Mm,
mythology and the Justice League. I had an amazing team of stylists. They go by the costume team, and they created the halo, the veil. All of that was created by them for this particular project. And I knew them from my
mhm.
theater days, and I brought them on board
Oh,
for this
very cool.
project, and we sort of collaborated on it, and we created different pieces for different images. In terms of shooting, we had 3 days to shoot
Oh,
this
wow,
project
which is not a lot.
because it's not, because we knew that the lockdown in Mumbai was opening up for 3 days. So I reached out to this model coordinator I knew. He pulled together a few models. I reached out to the stylist. They pulled together the outfits. We had been planning it
Mhm.
for a while, but we had a 3-day window to shoot the whole
Gosh.
project. So we did 10-hour days for 3 days back to
Oh,
back,
man.
and it was amazing. We had the most
There's a difference when you're
Mhm.
bringing in
Yeah,
department heads.
yeah.
What how has that changed, or how do you look at that when you're pitching it to a client and going, "This is what your budget is going to?"
When I'm pitching it, I tell the client that you're hiring me for photography. I'm great at capturing the images. I know my lighting. I'm very confident in that. Everything else, I'll have someone who is as confident
Mm,
in what they're doing come on board with that same energy that I'm coming on board to capture your images, to create images for you. So if you're trusting me, you can trust the team I'm bringing along with me, and know that we have all worked together. We have a good understanding of what's expected of us, and that's how I pitch it.
in all the fantastical work we've seen, this seems the most tame,
Hmm.
but this is an extremely
Yeah,
personal project that you're
it
working on.
is.
Explain how this came about. What is this project about?
So this project is part of the Zoroastrian portrait project that I did with the Zoroastrian community in the Bay Area. I was given a grant to accomplish this project, and we had 17 families. The idea for this project was to showcase our community in the two distinct ways that it is at present: the Indian Zoroastrians and the
Okay.
Persian Zoroastrians. And the whole idea was to photograph them in their most
Mhm.
traditional outfits. Indian Zoroastrians have like this traditional outfit that's carried forward over generations, but the Persian Zoroastrians, on the other hand, had to adapt because of the persecution they
Mm,
faced and still
okay.
continue to face till this day. And they came in more normal
Oh,
Western
interesting.
looking garb, like suits and dresses
Mhm.
and stuff like that, because that is how they had to acclimatize themselves to be able to continue pursuing
Mhm.
the religion versus pursuing a religious
Got it.
identity. And we wanted to photograph this and show it visually. So that's what we did. And it ended up becoming my first
Oh,
photo
wow.
book. The funds raised from this project are going towards a new center for Zoroastrians in the Bay Area.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
amazing. Okay. It's fascinating to see how much what can be done with photography. And it's awesome that we just landed on this personal, social, faith-based, culture-based project that you went from little Lego guys to something where you're actually helping to enshrine a culture?
As a photographer, I straddle that line of, oh my God, he's doing fine art as a commercial photographer. But I really enjoy it. They both let me express myself in particular ways. And obviously, it is an art, but you need to find a way to monetize it if it's your career. And commercial work pays the bills. The fine art work fulfills me as an artist.
So there you have it, some great advice about entering a career of art and design. And as more and more art and design career opportunities are on the rise, employers are always on the hunt for the next generation of talented and, of course, skilled creative professionals. At Academy of Art University, you will get those work-ready skills that employers want. You can study on-site in downtown San Francisco or anywhere in the world with our online programs. To request more information about our 40-plus areas of study in art and design, including game development, fashion design, photography, UX design, and more, just visit our website at academyart.edu/creativemind.